Dear viewers, welcome to a compelling conversation about the bedrock of democracy, freedom of the press. I'm honored to introduce our distinguished guest, Mr. Guilherme Canella, Chief of the Section on Freedom of Expression and Safety of Journalists at UNESCO. Good evening, Mr. Canella. Thank you for joining us. Without further delay, let's begin our conversation. And my first question is, how is the condition of the freedom of the press around the world?
Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you and your viewers, although about some bad circumstances regarding freedom of expression in general and press freedom in particular. UNESCO has been monitoring in these last few years the evolution of the situation of press freedom and freedom of expression worldwide. And unfortunately, the indicators are not good at all. For example, in our last World Trends report on freedom of expression and media development, we underlined that 85% of the world's population has experienced a decrease in their freedom of expression in the last preceding 5 years. So this is one global indicator that unfortunately shows that we have problems in terms of freedom of expression everywhere. And what are these problems? They also are what we have been calling a perfect storm. They are problems of different angles, from safety of journalists, as you are seeing in the images now, to problems of the economic viability of the media, the conditions of news media to survive, problems of bad regulation that's not aligned with international freedom of expression standards, and all of these in the middle of the biggest wave of disinformation, misinformation, conspiracy theories that we have in the digital environment, which contributes to generate extra obstacles to freedom of expression and access to information. So in a nutshell, currently, we are experiencing a series of challenges to freedom of expression after many years where we have advanced in the protection and promotion of this right. The big question is, what is happening right now, is a trend or is just a hiccup? No one has an answer for this question. What we want to make sure that this is a hiccup and not becomes a permanent trend in terms of the challenges for freedom of expression. This is what UNESCO and our partners are trying to do to further strengthen the protection and promotion, as you said, of this bedrock right for democracies and the protection of all other human rights.
Mr. Canella, does the United Nations take any action against those countries which restrict press freedom?
Well, the first thing that we do is to call the attention and to sound the alarm regarding what's happening in terms of press freedom. But it's also important to note that those that attack press freedom are not only governments. We have organized crime, we have private actors, we have different institutions attacking freedom of expression and press freedom worldwide. So in our case, the United Nations in general and UNESCO in particular, for example, in the area of safety of journalists, we have a global plan, the Plan of Action of United Nations on Safety of Journalists and the Issue of Impunity. And what we do here is really try to empower all the different actors that need to act in order to further protect freedom of expression so they can do it. For one concrete example, one key actor in this area is the judicial system. Judges and prosecutors are absolutely paramount for the protection of freedom of expression. So, for instance, UNESCO has a worldwide program for increasing the capacity building of judges and prosecutors so they can understand better the international standards of freedom of expression and press freedom in order to further protect those rights in the different countries that are members of the United Nations.
Mr. Canella, a number of journalists were killed around the globe last year. What can you do as United Nations to prevent other countries from killing journalists?
So as I said, it's not only countries that are governments that are involved in those killings, right? There are, in some cases, governmental officials involved, but in many cases, those are organized crime or different sorts of actors involved in these killings. So UNESCO and other agencies, funds, and programs in the United Nations system, we have been underlining for many years now that we need to advance what we call the policies of the three Ps: prevention, protection, and prosecution of the crimes. So the first thing is very important that all the society, every citizen who understands the importance of a free press for their own freedom and for their other rights and for development. So the society can always be very clear and with a loud voice that is absolutely paramount to protect freedom of expression in general and press freedom in particular. So this is very important for prevention. Protection, of course, in situations that is clear that there are several threats to journalists, threats from different kinds, from physical threats to online threats, it's very important that there are protection mechanisms in place. And third, if we don't fight impunity, so if we don't do the prosecution of the crimes, the cycle of violence restarts. So we also invest a lot in trying to reduce the impunity rates in crimes against journalists. So when we are looking to these scenarios that you just described in terms of the violence against journalists, what we are trying to do is to support policies that are comprehensive, therefore policies that go in those three Ps: the prevention, the protection, and the prosecution of the crimes.
Okay, as the last question, Mr. Canela, every year Rudaw Media Network holds Shifa Gardi Award, which honors the memory of the Rudaw journalist and news anchor Shifa Gardi, who lost her life while covering the ISIS war. The award highlights the talent of female journalists. How do you evaluate that award?
Look, awards for journalists are a very important tool for recognition, for paying tribute for the memory of those who lost their lives, for calling attention for those that are in dangerous situations. So different journalist awards, for instance, are for journalists that are currently in prison. And so these kind of awards also brought attention or bring attention to their cases, or for journalists or other institutions that have made an important contribution to the protection of press freedom. So awards are very important elements, particularly in the prevention side of what I called before the policy of the three Ps. For instance, UNESCO is the only UN institution with a UN official prize for journalists that is called the UNESCO Guillermo Cano Prize. And this prize in the last years, for instance, was important for releasing at least 8 journalists from jail after they received the award. So the response to your question is a sound yes. It's very important to find instruments like awards to acknowledge the work of colleagues, of journalists, and also to pay tribute for those that unfortunately have lost their lives in doing that, for simply doing their work.
As we conclude, I extend my thanks to our guest, Mr. Guilherme, for your invaluable insight. Thank you for your attention.
Always a pleasure to speak with you.